What's up, Internet? You're tuned in to episode 118 of the PotsCast. I'm your host, Pete and Bessie, joined, as always, by my very good friend, Mr. Stephen Radford.
Hello.
And joining us this week, Mr. Chris Brandrick from Switch Weekly.
Hey, man. How you doing?
Good, man. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk to you this week. So if those of you who don't know, Chris runs a little newsletter called Switch Weekly. It is the biggest Nintendo Switch newsletter. And just this past week, we got the results of the State of the Switch survey, which is Chris's annual survey about, you know, all of the collecting all of this amazing data about what's going on in the world of Nintendo Switch. We're going to be digging all into that this episode. I'm super excited to talk about it. But before we get into that, let me just quickly tell you where you can find the PotsCast all around the globe. Of course, we are the PotsCast, LootPots.com's weekly gaming podcast where Steve and I get together to talk about everything going on in the world of Nintendo and the world of video games. Of course, if you want to be a part of the show, you can write into me at pete@lootpots.com. Come join our Discord and write into our PotsCast our PotsCast segment. our PotsCast segment. That's just terrible. Our mail pot segment, where we'll pull questions from listeners like you. And you can, come get a bunch of other content from us all around the globe. If you want to come join our streams every Thursday, Steve and I are there on twitch.tv/lootpots, streaming a fun game for you, sometimes watching directs live, all that kind of good stuff. So come be a part of it. Come check it out. And then last but not least, of course, head over to the YouTube channel where you can give this video a like, give us a subscribe to our growing PotsCast channel, and get more episodes like this one. So, before we get into everything with the State of the Switch survey, I do want to start the show the way we often do by talking about what we're playing. Chris, since you are our guest this week, let's start with you. You've got a couple games on your list. One that we know pretty well, Baba Is You.
Yeah, a bit late to the party on this one, but I saw it was on sale like a week or two ago, so I decided to finally pick it up because I saw enough people talking about it that I wanted to see what the fuss was about. And yeah, it really makes you feel stupid. I've played it for about an hour and I've already hit so many roadblocks, and it's really inventive, and the way it works is really clever, but man, it really head scratcher for sure.
Are you big into puzzle games?
Not particularly, no, but I thought I'd check it out because, enough people were talking about it. But in terms of like puzzle games and from a traditional sense, yeah, I love like Tetris games and stuff, but this is more like a logic puzzler, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's really testing me, that's for sure.
Yeah, I'd say this one's like a 2D environment puzzler, really. It kind of reminds me a little bit of like Talos, where you have to like figure things out. And often I found in Talos as well that I ended up feeling stupid. Baba Is You, I ended up cheating on so many levels because I just felt ridiculously stupid. And then when you look it up, you kick yourself because you're like, how did I not figure that out?
I mean, I know I just said I've only played it for like an hour, but I have already like Googled like how to complete like one level, and instant like, oh, of course, I just
It's so funny. I don't generally gravitate towards that type of game specifically because of that, because like I know. I don't know about you guys, but when I play video games, generally it's because, I want to feel accomplished, right? Like I want to be able to like check some boxes and feel a sense of progression. And whenever I play a puzzle game like that, I inevitably hit that point where you're like, I don't know what to do. I have no idea. I feel like I've interacted with every item in this room and I've hit a wall. And then I look it up and I'm like, I'm not even playing the game anymore. Like, what am I doing?
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes I found that.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was saying sometimes I found going away from it and just taking like a 10-minute breather and then coming back, you get a fresh pair of eyes. But I also played a lot of it on the TV with my partner, and they would constantly see things I didn't see.
Oh yeah,
which was very, very strange. Like I guess people's brains work differently.
Oh yeah,
my
right?
my partner doesn't play video games at all, but I showed her this the other night, and she wanted to have a go on her own, and she's had a go on a few levels, and it's the same sort of thing. Like we both approach levels in different ways, and obviously you get to the same end result, but it's interesting that how people approach things. Yeah, sure.
I feel like that's part of the appeal of like why we love streaming and Let's Plays and all that stuff too, right? Is like, it is kind of fun to see somebody problem solve in a way that you wouldn't. And then also, right, there's that drama created when someone is doing the wrong thing or like, oh no, this is clearly what you need to do, and they just aren't getting it.
And you're just watching it going, come on.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And it's so funny because I feel like the kinds of players that really gravitate towards puzzle games like that, they want that, but like for themselves. Of like, I'm just gonna sit here pulling my hair out until I get that aha moment. And I don't know, for me, I feel like I hit that wall so much quicker than most players.
Yeah, I was surprised at how quickly I was like, oh, okay, this is actually really tough and it's going to challenge me a ton. So it's one of those games that I'm just going to kind of dip into sporadically, I think, for a long time.
Yeah.
But the kind of thought I had when I first opened it was like, I wonder if like programmers might get on better with this, like coders and things like that, because it seems to be like a lot of like conditional statements, like if this, then that sort of thing. So I don't know, maybe I should speak to some programmers how they feel about the game. But that's kind of the thought I had when I first opened it. It's like a lot of logic, conditional logic and things.
Have you played Human Resource Machine as well? That very much is a game for programmers. That basically is programming. It's like it's very similar, I think, to Scratch, where you say you move forward like one space, move forward one space. If this space equals 6, then pick the box up, and you have to get all the people to do things. I loved that game. Baba Is You, it sort of does fit that, but I found because it's not, you can't look at it and not, the rules aren't always the same. I don't feel. So you kind of have to get yourself in a different headspace. But I really enjoyed that game when I played it.
That was
I look forward to playing through it.
Definitely a game I was happy to appreciate from afar. Like, love what you guys are doing. I don't have it in me. Yeah. God bless. So you also had F-Zero on your list, going a little retro gaming.
Yeah. So as part of like Switch Weekly, which we'll get to later, I guess. But there's like a monthly games club, so we always like play through one of the games that's available on the Nintendo Switch Online service. And this month happened to be F-Zero. And I've not played that since, I don't know, 1994, 5 sort of time. So it's been a hot minute. And it really holds up quite well. I was quite surprised. Yeah. I mean, it is essentially a glorified tech demo, so there's that. But for what it is, it's a great showcase of what the Mode 7 was. And I imagine back in 1990, 91, whatever it was, it probably blew people away, But
oh my God, yeah.
Yeah.
Can you imagine what it was like seeing the auto-scrolling like background for the first time? Just like, oh my God.
Yeah. And it's blazing fast, and the controls are really, really tight. The AI cheats horrendously. The rubber banding in it is awful. Like, I was playing it last night, and I bumped into a ship midair coming off a ramp, and it flew off the map and like into the ether, and just turned around and came back on the map. I was like, okay. Okay. So yeah, I've really enjoyed playing it. I mean, there's not much to it in terms of like, there's not much meat on the bone. You can kind of see everything in about half hour if you really wanted to. So yeah, but I had fun with it. I really wish they'd make another one.
I know, it would be fun. Like, and it doesn't need to be like a AAA game, like let it be like a little like budget arcade kind of thing. I think that would be really fun.
See, I think Fast RMX kind of filled that hole for me on Switch. I had a great time with that game. But it's strange, all of those kind of games. Yeah, but all of those kind of games sort of went by the wayside. PlayStation had Wipeout as well, and they just haven't made one of those in ages. They remade I think it was the PS1 and PS2 ones for PS4, but then since then we've had nothing. We haven't had a brand new one in a long time,
which is a bummer.
I think like racing games without like some weird overarching gimmick don't seem to really cut through. If it's just a racing game, I mean, obviously the gimmick of F-Zero in itself is you go fast, but like even if you think like Forza, the way that's gone, it's like Forza Horizons is big open world.
Right?
There's no like trying to think of like a really big racing game that's just racing. I don't know. I mean, obviously, there's like Gran Turismo, but that's more. Do you get what I'm trying to get at? Like, in terms of like.
I feel like it's the similar kind of split you saw with sports games, right? Where like sports games used to all be very like arcadey, and then you hit the point where they became sims. And I feel like now that's kind of where you're at with driving games, where it's either like full sim mode and it's all about like it's gear stuff for gearheads, right? Or it's the gimmick game, where it's the open world, it's the smash 'em up, it's whatever. But like. You don't get a lot of those, like you said, like F-Zero, the gimmick of it was that it was a sci-fi racer, and that's it.
Yeah. I'd quite happily settle for just a HD remaster of GX and stick some online play into that. So
that'd be cool.
That would be for me.
Yeah, I got really into...
I wish they'd just do that with every GameCube game at this point. I just want them to just come in and go, here's every GameCube game in the emulator we made for... Galaxy and Sunshine, and it's just here it is on Switch. Just buy whichever
Crank
ones
the
you want.
settings up.
Just leaving
Mhm.
money on the table.
Yeah, I mean, Nintendo loves to do that. And then you said you also wrapped up on 3D World.
Yeah. Although I say wrapped up, I haven't done Champions Road.
Okay, you
but
got a
I've
little
seen
bit
the
left.
credits. Yeah, I've seen the credits.
Yeah.
So I mean that counts, right? But I originally like completely slept on that game. Like what was it, like 7 years ago when it came out on the Wii U? I didn't touch it. I just kind of bypassed it completely. And I was like, oh, that's not the 3D Mario game I want. I wanted something akin to like Galaxy and 64 and Sunshine to a lesser extent. So yeah, I didn't play it originally. So going back to it now, I was just kind of like, why did you pass up on this, man? It's level after level of consistent. They just chuck ideas at you non-stop, and it's like most games would like have an idea and they'll milk it. This game just chucks ones at you, level by level, and then just does away with it. And here's something new. Here's something new. I was like really surprised at how inventive and refreshing it was every level all the way through. So yeah, really good game.
Yeah, I totally agree. I also missed it when I was on Wii U originally. I think it was just some other game was out at the time and very limited budget. So, and you just never got back to it. So I'm like super glad I got the opportunity. How did you feel about Bowser's Fury?
Honestly, I've played about half an hour of it, so I do need to go back into that.
Oh, I'm so excited to hear you get into that. Very cool.
Yeah. Have you played much of it then?
Yeah, and Steve beat it as well. I'm like almost done with it. I've got like maybe a few more cat shines I got to get before I get to the last battle. But it's super creative. It's like it feels like a significant diversion from the formula. Like it feels like a new type of 3D Mario in the way that, when you get to Galaxy and it's like it's 3D, but it's like more like level clearing kind of based, It feels like kind of a marriage of those two things because you have the whole full open world, but there are all these little like sub levels and ways to get cat shines as well.
Yeah.
And it kind of mixes like level based challenges, but also just like environmentally discovering things, and very cool.
So
yeah, I really
liked
liked it.
Of, like, everyone's kind of saying that this is like the future of what 3D Mario should be. And this is just like an amuse-bouche, just a little taster of what it could be. Do you kind of think there's merit to that kind of argument in terms of like they should just really, kind of explore what this is and flesh it out and make a full game on that kind of concept? Or
definitely,
fine as it is.
Definitely want to see that. I would love to see them commit to this formula, but bigger. But I do think that it's different enough that I don't see it like replacing an Odyssey as much as just being like another flavor to be offered.
Right.
I agree.
That 2D, 3D sort of things, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
There's even stuff like the triple jump's not in this, which has been a staple of 3D Mario since '64. You can tell that they very much see this as an expansion of 3D World because the camera is free movement, but it always snaps back to kind of a specific point after a certain time. But it very much feels like to me one giant Mario Odyssey world, but within there's different subsections that you go to, and each subsection has its own style and theme and very much a different challenge you have to complete. And you can see all the elements they took from 3D World, like the flip panels, the red and blue ones that flip over and things like that. They're all in there, and all of the cat suits there, and the fact that you've got an inventory essentially for the first time in a Mario game is really nice. I loved that game, and it's something I'd like to see expanded upon, absolutely. But I don't want it to replace 3D Mario because I like the ability to go from world to world to world and it feeling totally different like it did in Odyssey.
And what was cool about this world is how they build on it too. Like it has a sense of progression because as you unlock more shines, the map gets bigger, but then the places you've already been, new areas open up and stuff. So it's got kind of a Metroidvania vibe in that way where you get used to the idea of like getting familiar with the space and having it be recontextualized over and over again.
So I obviously need to go take a look at it because that sounds like really neat. Because I mean, the time I played with it, there was like already areas I could see that I couldn't get to. So that's neat that you can kind of go back to these things. This might be spoilers, but do you find out what Bowser's furious about? Why is he so mad?
I don't know yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you'll have to play and find out. But You kind of get alluded to it right at the beginning that
That's
he's
true.
kind of been infected by the slime stuff, and there's the Shadow
Right.
Mario that's in the game from Sunshine. So
Right.
you do kind of get it, but as with any Mario game, the story is very
Yeah, it's like
thin.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Apart from the epic that is Sunshine.
Oh yeah.
That deep, deep, deep story. So,
Mario went to prison. That means
yeah, it's true. You're right. And you got to remember that was in the 2000s when there was that infamous image of him with that awful tribal tattoo.
oh, that tribal tattoo.
He got it while he was in jail, you know?
I like that.
So, Steve, you finally got the chance to play a game called Littlewood, which we've been talking about on the show since February when Chewy was on for Ring Fit February, and he was really enjoying it. Finally made its way to Europe. You got your hands on it. I've seen you've been playing it a lot. What's the verdict?
It's incredible. I haven't put this game down since I got it. I must have spent like 6 hours on it yesterday alone, just constantly. And it's the perfect TV game. You can have something on in the background and you can just be doing your tasks that you want to do. It's very, very chill. No task has repercussions. If you don't do a challenge for someone, it's still there the next day, unlike in something like Stardew Valley where it expires. People don't ever get annoyed at you. You can't die. You don't lose money if you pass out. It's just a very relaxing game, very creative game. You get the ability to make your town exactly how you want. And it very much takes a lot from Animal Crossing. It very much feels like a 2D Animal Crossing with people, which I love. Like even things down to the fact that you can upgrade every building, you can increase the size of your town by giving someone lots of money. But beyond that, there's loads of places you can go, which I didn't realize. So I thought you were restricted to the town, but there's a port town you can go to, which you can take people on dates to. You can gamble in the
Oh.
casino. There's like a deck building card game. You find cards throughout the world. You can go fishing, mining. There's a endless forest you can go to. There's a backstory of the fact that you were a hero who's lost his memory, which sounds very familiar to Zelda, that got defeated by like a dark wizard who's also lost his memory, and you kind of become friends with your old enemy who moves into the town. It's really, really cool, really
Sounds
fun game. I love the style of it. And I love just the progression, the fact that it kind of you want to go and play more, you want to get to the next level so you can help the villagers, because in order to do their houses up how they want, you have to have like certain skills and to be able to unlock the items and get to where you want to be. Like there's a house I can't even build at the moment because I need to get into the third forest, and to get into the third forest I need to have a level 60 woodcutting skill. So I'm currently working on getting my woodcutting skill
Okay.
up. But it's really nice. And I love the fact that the days progress just based on energy. There's no internal clock in the game like there is in Stardew Valley or Animal Crossing. Every action you do, like chopping a tree down or mining, uses a little bit of the energy, and that progresses the day. It's just a really great game. If you like life sims, you like something like Stardew Valley, but maybe even Stardew Valley didn't connect with you because you felt that there was too many chores to do, or you weren't really into the farming aspect, then I would say check out Littlewood. It's relatively cheap. It's £11 on the eShop in the UK. I think it's $15. It's made by one person.
It's 20 in North America.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay. Well, we
wow.
got a good deal then.
Yeah,
at
you guys are getting
£11.
a deal. Yeah, I only know because I looked. I was browsing the eShop last night because I kind of am in the mood for something like smaller on Switch. And I ended up picking up a couple games on the sale, but yeah, I have that one on my wish list now, and I was like, $20. I'm gonna wait and see what Steve said.
You need to commit to it. Did you like Stardew Valley at all?
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll love this game. If you like Stardew Valley and you like Animal Crossing, you will love this game. If Stardew Valley didn't connect with you, so a friend of mine was asking on Twitter, like, how close to Stardew is it? Because it very much, you look at it and you can see the comparisons
Yeah, for sure.
to it. But there's a lot different. You know, you don't have to farm every single day. You don't have to water anything. It just automatically grows. You don't have to worry about any of that stuff. You can do what you want, and you can still become friends with all of your villagers essentially. You can date them. You can take every single one on a date if you want to. You can, I think you can marry them eventually, but I haven't reached that point. And there's always new buildings you're unlocking. There's always new villagers who are moving in, and every single one has specific requirements. Like they want to live next to a certain place, but certain like a number of blocks away from something else. Like there's someone who wants to live next to the flight deck, but wants to live away from the quarry. But you don't realize until you've upgraded their house to a certain point, and then you're constantly rearranging your town.
Interesting.
Which I like because it forces you not to do what I had originally done when everyone moved in, which is make a little village area, put all of the houses in it, and then all the shops in another area, and all of the like wood cutting and the smelt place and all of that stuff, like an industrial area. I very much segmented it as if I was playing like Sim City and we were zoning off all of the stuff. But it forces you to put the people where they want to go, which really makes your town a lot more vibrant and spaced out. And you have to you can elevate, you can do all of the terraforming stuff you can do in Animal Crossing. Like you can put a lake wherever you want. You can go up 3 tiers. So it's really great. It's very creative, and I'm having a great time with it, and I know you will, Pete.
It's very interesting. Yeah, I like the way that it sounds like those systems interact with each other. Like it sounds like there's a really good kind of, I don't even want to say carrot and stick, but like the fact that each of those systems that you described interacts with all of them in ways where it's like it incentivizes you to actually engage with all of those systems the way that you should, rather than, I know the way I played Stardew, where it was like, becoming friends with the townspeople, the whatever. I'm trying to maximize my farm. How much money can we make? How much can I just make this a perfect machine? And I was basically playing it like a Sim City rather than a social sim. So that's interesting.
The town stuff is very much the meat of this game. It is keep them happy and do what they want and upgrade their houses to how they want, and that's ultimately what the goals are in a day-to-day basis, alongside you also increasing your skills. Like you're just tasked, you start with nothing. There's your house, there's a well, and that's it, and then one person moves in. But other than that, the town's in like ruin. It's been destroyed by the Dark Wizard who you had this battle with, and so you're just tasked as the hero to build it all up again. Cool. And that's essentially what you're doing, which very much is like Animal Crossing. It's like you start with tents and you want to do everything up to make the townsfolk happy and get it looking how you want it to look.
Nice. Well, it's definitely on my radar. What was the game you just recommended? The Puzzler from Apple Arcade?
Oh, Grindstone.
I picked that up last night.
Whoa!
I haven't gotten a
chance
to.
Get with that?
I didn't get a chance to play it yet. But I had a nice collection of gold coins, so I grabbed a couple games on sale and then was able to get that for free. So I'm sitting pretty. So I'll have some thoughts on that.
Is Grindstone on sale at the moment?
Or it wasn't. I just used my gold coins for it. But I got Party Hard, Risk, and Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle all on sale, and used all the coins that I had left over to get Grindstone. So plenty to talk about next week.
Nice haul.
Yeah, 4 games, and I think I spent like $20, like maybe 25, like not bad at all.
Decent.
I'm really excited to play Party Hard again. I loved that game when it came out on PC. But what I did really play this week more so was Ghost of Tsushima. I have been talking about replaying it again. I platinumed it when I played it the first time, so I really have nothing left to do, but I just really have wanted to get back to that world for whatever reason. So I decided to do a New Game Plus run. I replayed the opening of the game on a new file just so I could like get set in the story, because New Game Plus tosses you out when it opens up the open world. So I started there, and then I played it yesterday for a huge chunk of time. And it was one of those things where I was like, yeah, all right, I'll play this for like an hour or two. And then I look at the clock and it's midnight, and I was like, oh, woof. All right, we're 4 or 5 hours in now. This is great. I had been in the mood already, but then when there was the news that the Ghost of Tsushima movie was in development with the John Wick director, I was like, all right, I guess this is the time to scratch the itch.
Is Keanu going to reprise his role as like a samurai, do you think? Is he going to come back and do that for Tsushima?
I really hope not.
Yeah.
because I love Ghost. Great story. I could totally see it being a movie. Especially like, you know, that seems like a match made in heaven. You know, because it is like a super action heavy story. So yeah, we'll see. I'm interested. You know, video game movies are a real like. I try not to get emotionally invested at all, but could be good.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen a good video game movie at this point.
Definitely more misses than hits for sure.
Yeah, Detective Pikachu was pretty cute. That was good.
Oh yeah, Detective Pikachu was good. I actually did quite like the Sonic movie.
That was good too.
Like a fully live action one. And I guess maybe I'm thinking of the era of Tomb Raider and Doom.
Yeah.
And those movies were bad, along with the Mario Brothers movie. That thing stunk.
I forgot there was a Doom movie. Completely and then there's
Yeah,
the Street
and,
Fighter one as well.
The Rock's in it.
Oh yeah.
It's not good. I mean, I don't know, man.
Mario. There's like a Mario movie in like 2 years, right?
Yeah. There's and that's animated, but
that's not live action, yeah.
which is perhaps probably for the best.
That should be good, but I really hope they do a different story other than Bowser kidnapping Peach, because I think we've all seen that one a bazillion times at this point.
Sure, yeah.
It's weird, like I don't know, like discourse has this way of like evolving, doesn't it, over time? But I'm seeing more and more people now considering Super Mario Brothers like of 1993 to be this like cult classic, and it's like it's not. I'm seeing a lot more people kind of see it in like a good light. You know, it's got cool moments and like the world build, the kind of sets and stuff are sweet,
yeah.
But
the atmosphere of it is cool, but it's bad. It's got a terrible script.
Yeah,
I think
and it ain't Mario.
It's fun to watch in like a how did this ever get made kind of way, you know? Like
watching it in an ironic sense is kind of fun.
Yeah. Especially if you're watching it with other friends who like care about Mario at all, and you can just kind of like take the, you know, just
like, oh my god.
It's what how? Cuz you look at that and you can kind of like have a better understanding of why Nintendo is so like tight about the way that their IP gets used now, right? Like that was their first
like
foray.
A sour taste in their mouth, yeah.
Well, that and the CDI games, those things were trash as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's like a few years there where it's just really dodgy stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and then now they've just like stamped that boot down of like, no. Universal or nothing. So let's hop into the main topic this week, where we are going to talk all about Switch Weekly. So of course, like we said at the top, the State of the Switch survey for 2021 just dropped just a few days ago at this point, and I'm really excited to dive into this with you, Chris, because so much interesting information here to dive into, and I also want to talk a little bit about just kind of the mechanics of putting this whole thing together and all that. But before we get into the nitty gritty, the first question I wanted to ask was, you know, you've been doing this since, you know, the launch of the Switch, right? So this is now the fourth one. Was there any piece of data in this specific round that was like the most surprising to you, that like really, really threw you for a loop maybe?
Not really. I mean, the stats kind of didn't blow me away in terms of anything. Oh, like, that's a really revealing stat. I think the kind of thing that I took away from it mostly was the rise in people saying that they had Joy-Con drift, because I know it's a big problem, but 65% of those who filled out the survey this year said they had drift of some sort, and that's up like 20% year over year. And I think that was the one that really stood out to me, because although we all know it's a thing and we all know it's like happening, I think the fact that it's like a 20% rise just speaks to the fact that Nintendo don't seem to be doing anything about it. That's the kind of message that I took from that. It's like, how are we another year on from this, and there's a massive rise in people saying that they're having this issue, and we're still not having any sort of like resolution from Nintendo. And I kind of get why they haven't, because the minute you admit defeat, then the minute they admit there's a problem here, then it's going to cost them a hell of a lot of money in terms of like callback program. I don't know how it would work, but yeah, that was the kind of key thing that's jumped out at me.
And I'm interested to see how that develops even into next year, right? Because you think about how many Switches were sold this year and how many more are on the market, that like you got to imagine the problem is just going to keep compounding. And like the person who bought their Switch, you know, in 2018 or 19, maybe they're experiencing it for the first time now in 2021. Yeah, it's bad.
And especially like if there's new hardware coming, then they have to solve this.
I hope
There's no way
so.
they can there's no way they can put out new hardware without this being resolved. And that was actually
I
a
genuinely
point.
think they will though, because you've got the new Zelda Joy-Cons coming this year, and
Mm.
I feel like they should have resolved the issue in the Joy-Cons they're selling currently. I don't see there being a Joy-Con revision alongside the Switch Pro personally, because how many people have bought Joy-Cons at this point? They need to
No,
be compatible.
I don't think there'll be a revision of any sort. I mean, if they're going to change it for the Switch Pro, they'll do it quietly and you won't even know about it. It's kind of what I'm suggesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, who's to say? Maybe the Zelda ones that you're talking, they're not on the market yet, right? Like maybe those are, maybe they have some sort of fix in them already that we just are not privy to yet. You'd hope.
Yeah,
that would be nice.
Brings back to like when the Xbox 360 had like the red rings of death, and they kept kind of putting it off, and then it ended up costing them something like $1 billion to fix it and stuff. So.
Well, and they had that class action lawsuit, which ultimately forced their hand, and I can really see something like that happening with Nintendo. I bought a pair of Joy-Cons to resolve drift, and I repaired them myself. I repaired another set myself, which are now also drifting again. And I know they were OEM joysticks as well, so there's definitely a problem with the drifting, and it makes sense to me that it would compound this year. I mean, what are we up to? Like 4 years on?
Yeah.
At this point. So that to me kind of is the lifespan of a controller. I know I went through a PS4 controller. I've gone through Xbox 360 controllers. They do go eventually.
And that's fine. I mean, I expect that. But yeah.
And especially if you're an active player, right? Like if you're somebody who is playing every single day and eventually your controller starts to degrade, that's kind of understandable, right? I think Joy-Con drift feels so egregious and so like offensive to so many people because I don't know about you guys, like I own 4 or 5 sets of Joy-Cons and almost all of them have drift now. You know, it's like I'm down to my last 2 and I don't want to buy another set.
No. I think what's a shame about it really is that Nintendo have a really, really good track record in terms of like their hardware.
Yeah.
Like going back like 30 years, I mean, I've never had any problems with anything. I mean, yeah, the N64 stick was bad after time, but again, that was just an issue of time in terms of its durability. But like the Game Boy, the GameCube controllers, they were rock solid. You could throw a Game Boy down the stairs and it wouldn't matter.
They still work. Like I have my original Game Boy behind. It still works, you know?
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's a real shame that this has kind of put a bit of a cloud over things in terms of how people perceive it, because it is a widespread issue, and a few people in the survey commented that they didn't want to like buy anything else because they were really kind of hesitant, like oh, I won't buy a Switch Pro unless I know that the drift is fixed. So it's in people's minds for sure as like a kind of making them hold back a bit,
And I think when you get into the conversation of like preservation and everything too, right? Like, which is a hot topic on everybody's lips this week with everything going on with PlayStation. What happens when the Switch is obsolete tech and they don't want to fix your Joy-Cons anymore and they all just drift and then all of a sudden nobody can play Switch anymore, like ever, or you constantly have to be fixing them yourself or doing aftermarket stuff, and like nobody wants that,
Not at all. So yeah, that was kind of the main thing really that kind of jumped out at me.
Yeah, 65% is high.
Yeah.
Very high, yeah.
But yeah, just to kind of give a bit of context, because I know we just kind of jumped straight into the data there on that point. The survey, I've been doing it for 4 years, like you said, and every year it kind of gets around 10,000 responses. Majority they are from Reddit, so kind of pinch of salt in that it is an enthusiast crowd that's answering this survey. But I still think it kind of shows some interesting things, yeah.
Yeah, so before we get into more of the data, let's talk about the process. So I think this year you had over 11K respondents. So that's I guess the biggest you've had so far, right?
It's up there, yeah.
That's great. So in terms of I guess the mechanics of getting this survey down, right? Like, I'm imagining you did the first one at the end of the first year of the Switch?
Correct.
So what was kind of the onus behind that, right? Like you've had this newsletter going for a while. I know that the first edition of it came out when the Nintendo Switch was revealed. So you've been there right since the beginning.
I registered the domain the day that the Switch name got announced, yeah.
Oh, wow. You were right there.
Yeah.
So so what was kind of the decision behind wanting to do the State of the Switch survey and collect this data?
I think really it was just having come from the kind of Wii U days when I think Nintendo fans were just a bit miserable, in to be honest.
Yeah.
This felt like a real kind of refreshing kind of change for Nintendo, and this console had a really kind of good energy around it. And my kind of feeling at the time was, oh, okay, well, the first birthday is coming up. It would be good to kind of check the pulse, so it was, of like the Nintendo community and see how they feel about this thing. Now we've had it all for a year. I mean, even a year on, everyone was still gushing over Breath of the Wild, and they still are 4 years later. That game has incredible staying power. So yeah, that was kind of the kind of main reason, really. I was trying to kind of get a feel of how people felt about these things, and it kind of the first year only had like 1,000 responses to the survey, and since then it's kind of like blown up and become this mammoth thing that I have to do every year now, and it's really interesting to see all the data and pull it all together. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and if you guys haven't checked it out, we'll have a link to it in the description down below. You should absolutely go check it out for yourself. It's a really great piece of data journalism. Like it's huge, and there's all these great charts, and all of the most interesting stuff is highlighted. It's super easy to get into the nitty gritty and see the cool stuff.
Yeah, the reason I highlight stuff is just to try and make it scannable, because no one's going to sit there and read 9,000 words, which is what it all is.
I did.
But yeah. Oh, okay, well, thank you very much. Yeah, so I highlight things just so you can kind of go in, dip in and out, and kind of pick up the key points, basically, the kind of highlights, the kind of headlines of what you need to know. So yeah. And
you got all those great interactive charts and everything. Like it's super easy. If you're a data dork like I am, it's a good one. I think the thing that I was most surprised by were two things. Was the hours in the how you play section, which I remember was when you had called out, you had thought it would maybe be a little bit higher because
of the pandemic.
Yeah, right. Like everybody's home. And I kind of was wondering, I'm like, oh, I wonder if that was because people burned out on Animal Crossing, or maybe some of the respondents weren't Animal Crossing fans or whatever, and there wasn't that, Breath of the Wild or equivalent like
that moment.
Yeah, that huge game that you can just sink 100 hours into 2 times over,
Well, I ask every year, what's the game that you've played the most on the Switch? And every year, it's always been Breath of the Wild. That's still at the top of people's play charts in terms of what they've played. However, just to kind of get a bit of a different feel for things, I also asked, what's the game you played the most during 2020? And Animal Crossing was the winner there. So I imagine, people have sunk a hell of a lot of time into that. But in terms of the bigger picture, the pandemic didn't seem to kind of impact people's game playing habits, but I saw it as an opportunity to get through some of my backlog at least.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was really telling to me, that one specifically, because it was the only, apart from Hades, it was the only new game that really logged any kind of number. No one seemed to play Paper Mario whatsoever, which
no, it didn't get much mentions.
Oh my god!
Same for Pikmin.
I was going to say,
it was really just Animal Crossing.
Yeah, you said it was only 10% of respondents had owned Pikmin, and like when you think about the fact that, like you said, right, like the majority of the respondents are from Reddit, like you'd think that that's the Nintendo hardcore, right? Like
that's the crowd that will be picking it up. Sure.
Yeah.
But
disappointing.
Yeah, I think Pikmin is going to end up being one of those series that goes the way of F-Zero. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or maybe just become a mobile game, which it is with Niantic. I think that may be just the fate of Pikmin.
I mean, who's to say though, right? Like, because if the mobile game is good and popular, then maybe that's the inroad to Pikmin 4. But who's to say?
And the kind of thing with Paper Mario, I think that series, if it isn't 1,000-year door, people aren't going to play it. That kind of seems to be the onus of the Paper Mario community, at least.
Yeah, I remember that. The response to that game was kind of what pushed me off of it, because everyone was like, the story's really, really good, it's really funny, like it's the best one since 1,000-Year Door, but like the gameplay is not, it's whatever. You can skip all the fights if you want, and it's like, almost got me. And then the other thing was seeing that playing on the dock mode on TV was the most popular way to play, and that it has been the last couple of years. I was super surprised by that, because I don't think I know anybody that plays that way. One person.
I played probably like 80% handheld, and like 20% of the time I might play it on the TV. But yeah, it's pretty 50-50, and it has been like throughout the time I've been running this survey, just always slightly in favor of playing on the TV. Yeah.
Which is that aligns with Nintendo's data as well. That's what they said, and we had that conversation when they revealed that, and it was very much like, really, because we don't get that. And we thought maybe it was a Japan versus the West thing. Is
Mm-hmm.
Japan more like handheld versus the West? But I would imagine most people coming from Reddit are from this side of the world rather than
Yeah.
Japan answering your survey.
Yeah, and I mean,
Yeah.
when you did the demographic breakdown, it was like what, like 60% were from North America, right?
US.
Yeah. So it's wild. It's
But
super
I
wild.
also think that's kind of a really good validating piece of data though for what the Switch is. I mean, that it is so perfectly near 50-50 of like,
Yeah.
people want to switch, pardon the pun. So that's good for the kind of, I don't know, proof. It kind of validates the product, doesn't it, for what it is.
Oh yeah, yeah, I think absolutely. And I remember, there's a thing that that you do in the article where you like pull quotes from certain people to like kind of provide a personal
Get a
context.
flavor. Yeah.
And I remember somebody had said that they're like, I really hope that Nintendo commits to this and just keeps with the hybrid model. I mean, I've been saying that the whole generation of the Switch, but like looking at it in cold hard data, it's like, God, they would be idiots not to, right? Like,
Yeah,
if
absolutely,
like everything
yeah.
should be a Switch from moving forward for them.
Yeah, people love switching, that's for sure. So another thing really was kind of related to that was that dual ownership of like Nintendo Switch is kind of slightly up as well year on year. Obviously helped in part by the light that households are now having multiple Switches.
Mm-hmm.
I assume like one for like their partner or like to hand to siblings and things like that. But that also kind of speaks to the 50-50 split in terms of having different ways to play. So
I really think Animal Crossing was a huge factor in people buying a second Switch. The fact that you couldn't have two separate
People said
islands
that.
on the same
yeah,
Switch.
Yeah.
it did.
It's because that's the reason I got one.
Right.
Because I
I
didn't
think
want to
that's kind
share
of
an
an-
island.
Yeah, it's kind of an embarrassing reason for Nintendo, but it is a reason nonetheless. I mean, oh yeah, we're forcing people to get a second system because of weird arbitrary
Yeah.
rules, but okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's the thing, right? Like, I'm sure they're laughing all the way to the bank because, of course, they're selling you a second Switch, and then it's not like you're only using that for Animal Crossing, right? Like Steve, you just said, you got your partner a Switch, and they use it for other things. That was just the gateway. So I'm sure they're happy about that, as anti-consumer as it is. Yeah, I'm sure they're real happy about that, and. I wanted to ask Chris, because you said like you have a family. Are you guys a multi-Switch household?
No, it's just me.
Yeah.
Like I said, my wife isn't much of a gamer, and my son is barely 2, so
Not yet.
he's not there yet. Not yet.
He'll get there.
Get the Switch Lite too.
Yeah. Like one of his first words though, he knows how to say Mario. So that's
Oh yeah, all right. You're doing a good job there.
Yeah, anyway.
You're doing the Lord's work. Yeah, I
But yeah, I
mean,
imagine we will be soon.
I-
Multi-Switch household.
I'm not surprised because I remember anecdotally, right? But like my cousin who is a few years older than me, she has 2 children, and I remember during the DS and the 3DS era, right? They had 3 to 4 of both of them in their household,
Yeah.
and it was both kids had one, mom and dad both have one, and then they come together and play on Xbox or Wii, right?
Yeah.
And the beauty of the Switch, right, is like you can serve any of those markets, and like it's so man, it's just such a smart
Yeah,
pitch.
it's got that versatility kind of baked into it, which is really nice. Obviously, it's a bit more of an expensive proposition if you want like 4 of them in the house, as opposed to like picking up $99 DSs. But
Sure.
but still, yeah, I mean, it seems to be working for them.
Yeah, I mean a $150 for the Switch Lite is not bad,
No.
Definitely more expensive.
And I think that when the Switch Pro comes out, people will hand me down the old Switch to their kids or to someone else in their family. Because I know I'm probably going to be giving mine to my dad because he wants a Switch, but he will never ever play handheld because his eyes aren't good enough.
Right.
But to get a used one and just use it docked, it makes sense for him to do that. I wanted to touch a little bit on some of the other games that people said they had. And it fascinated me. Another one that fascinated me was the 3D All-Stars, the fact that almost 60% owned the game, but
Yeah.
it didn't rank anywhere on the top games that people were playing this year, which really goes to show how shitty of a thing that is that Nintendo is just limiting this release to inflate
absolutely.
sales that people
Yeah.
don't want to play this game.
Yeah, it's 57% of the 11,000 people picked up 3D All Stars.
Yep.
And yeah, it's clearly the fact that it's got such a high attach rate so quickly is just really telling that they're limited stick it in the Disney Vault style strategy
Yeah.
is totally working for them.
It works.
Yeah.
I mean, you know,
And that means they're going to keep doing it. It really, really means they're going to keep
I mean,
doing it.
the funny thing is like I remember there being that very visceral reaction to that news, right? And like understandably so, but it's also not the first time they did it, right? Like on the Wii, that was how they celebrated Mario's 25th anniversary. They had it was the original All-Stars that they just ported on a Wii disc and charged $60 for. You know, it's just three
They've got precedent, that's for sure. Yeah, people forget, right?
Well, and I mean, right, like think about it. That's how they made Amiibo a thing.
Yeah.
Right? Like there was artificial scarcity. The Villager, the Wii Fit, and who was the other one? Marth were like insanely rare, and then all of a sudden they were collector's items. They were Beanie Babies, and you gotta chase them down, and you know. And I was one of those suckers. Look, you can see behind me. I got them all right here in this case.
I'm proud to say I've only ever bought one Amiibo. It did not become this obsession, thankfully. I avoided that one.
I got all the Zelda ones, and that was all I cared about. Other than that,
Yeah.
I was just like done with it. Like I really wanted the Guardian one, so I made sure I got that, and that was like the in for me. And then every other Zelda one, I was like, I just want to complete the collection, so I got all of the Zelda anniversary ones, and then I was done. I was like, I can't buy any more of these things because it's just going to become a thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
But the other game that really was interesting, I think, and indicated the way the pandemic did sway people's gaming habits was Ring Fit, because it was up from 26% up from 15% last year. And I know that this game was difficult to get a hold of. I struggled to get it. But the fact that a quarter of respondents, a quarter of 11,000 people have this game, presumably to exercise during the pandemic, is I think only a good thing. We did Ring Fit February with Chewy, and we both had a great time doing it, and that game is fun and brutal at the same time.
Yeah, it really is.
Oh yeah.
It's one of those games that it's going to have like a really long tail, I think, in terms of its sales. It's one of those Nintendo's like evergreen titles, is what they call it, isn't it? I asked last year if people had like problems getting anything in terms of like stock shortages, and like 40% said they had, which is quite high, really. And I asked the same question this year, and 40% said they had problems in getting some sort of Switch-related item. And Ring Fit Adventure was one of those kind of most mentioned. So there's still a big appetite out there to get it, and I don't know what kind of problems Nintendo have in terms of fulfilling the stock, whether that's just operational reasons or whatever. But whatever issues they are having, I can't imagine the pandemic has helped that in any way. Obviously, they've had a year now to kind of figure that out, so being able to use that as an excuse doesn't really seem to hold much water to as much degree as it did. I guess people aren't so forgiving as they were maybe in March of last year. But a lot of stock shortage problems they seem to be having. People mentioned like I'm kind of going off the Ring Fit point here, but people mentioned like Animal Crossing Switch, that limited edition Switch they did.
Yeah.
There was another one that they didn't manage to get hold of easily.
I couldn't even get a Switch in general. Like I really struggled to find one at the beginning of lockdown last year. I really wanted to get one for my partner so that we could play Animal Crossing on 2 separate Switches, and I ended up having to get them a used one, which I got for basically the same price as a new one because there was just none for sale anywhere.
Huh. So yeah, I don't know what the issues there are, but it does seem to be a kind of persistent thing year on year. That it was the same percentage anyway. I mean, 60% didn't have any issues, so read into that what you will, but it seems to be enough of a problem, and Nintendo hasn't really moved the needle in terms of solving it. It would seem.
I wonder if specifically with regard to Ring Fit, do they want to have some kind of scarcity, because you got to imagine that that's a product that it has this additional peripheral. It probably costs a little bit more to produce and everything, that if you overproduce and then they're just sitting, that's a real problem.
Big, bulky icon.
Yeah, right. Whereas if you
the inventory and the channels and stuff like that.
Yeah, you just do a run of it, and then when that's gone, you print another run, and you just keep doing it until you see demand start to dwindle.
No, I think that makes sense. They probably are a bit more cautious in terms of how they manage the stock levels on that one, but the appetite's still there for sure. I remember that it might have been actually last March, but there was a lot of copies of the game selling in China for 3 times their value and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I know people that bought it at an upcharge too. I think DJ did, our old co-host. I think he bought it at a 50% upcharge because he wanted to get his hands on it.
I would think I would have ended up having to do that if I wasn't lucky and grabbed it just before we started Ring Fit February, because otherwise I wouldn't have been able to partake in it.
Yeah.
Right.
The fact that again, 26% of the people who replied said that they owned it, and then like you compare that to some of those other titles we were talking about that didn't connect quite as much, and again, that's very interesting, right? 26 compared to 23% who have Age of Calamity. Just under 20% said they had Origami King. Around 15% said they had the Clubhouse and Worldwide Classics, and then only 10 said they had Pikmin Deluxe. Like we said, super interesting to think that Ring Fit is that popular.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's been on the market longer, but I still think, if people are going to go out and get these games, this is the enthusiast crowd, like you say, so they're going to go get them anyway. So the fact that you see those numbers is kind of telling, yeah.
Yeah, especially when you pointed out a couple times, right, that there were a lot of, enthusiast replies who had like thousands of games in their library or whatever, right? So obviously there's some people on this list that are nuts and are going to buy everything that comes out. So
yeah, I mean, the average kind of person here said they had like 28 games, which is pretty decent. I mean, I've probably got about 100, but that's like mainly like digital titles. But yeah, some people filling out the survey have like hundreds, maybe even thousands of games, and a few of them did say in excess of 1,000 games. Right? So yeah, there's a few people here that are obsessed with typing these games.
I just can't imagine. I have 1/5 of the games released on Switch.
Yeah, insane.
Oh man,
that is a high number though. That is kind of fascinating, because I do remember, and I think it was, I know it was a PS4 statistic, and I think it was that Sony said their average was like 7 games that people bought or something like that.
Yeah, I'm always kind of surprised by these figures and whether they are just reporting like physical game sales or not, because I always just assume people have more digital games, but I don't know.
Me too, but I think that goes to the enthusiast crowd, that people like us buy indie games, whereas I know the average Joe kind of plays FIFA and Call of Duty and the big hitters every year, and that's all they play. And maybe they'll download Fortnite to play with their friends, but other than that, they just buy the games they've always bought every single year.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah. In terms of the ownership of those games, I asked as well, like if they're like physical or digital, and it's around half and half, to be honest. So out of those 28, like 14 would be digital, 14 physical. So
yeah, that was another one I saw that I thought was interesting. Was that close of a split on physical versus digital? Which I think you called out in the article, right? Which is like you would think that it would be more digital just because there are so many more digital titles.
Yeah, there's like 5,000 games on the Switch now, and it's like the massive majority of those are not available physical. So you'd think you'd see that reflected there, but not so much.
Yeah, and I guess it speaks to the fact that. Right, I mean, you called out the games that people played most and everything. A lot of them are older titles, right? Like the list is Animal Crossing and is the only new title. Like the best selling, most played games are the Nintendo developed more AAA stuff.
Yeah, it goes back to the adage of people buy Nintendo consoles to play Nintendo games, and that's 100% true, isn't it? I mean, you're seeing the kind of split here of physical digital. I imagine most of those physical games are Nintendo published games. So
yeah, most likely. And I also think that this goes on to the eShop section that you did, that essentially the eShop is still trash and it's got worse, progressively worse year on year.
Yeah, the more games
there's been no performance change, and you can't find anything. There's hardly any visibility whatsoever.
And it just runs terribly.
It's another one of those compounding problems, really, where the more games that get added to the system, which is great, the bigger this problem becomes, because discoverability stinks on the eShop, and people always bring that up. And the same was true last year. So again, it's one of those things that's kind of disappointing to not see much movement on it, mainly from like a performance point of view for me.
Yes.
I obviously use the eShop every Sunday to sit and go through all of the games that are coming out and think about what to say about each of them for my newsletter. So having to do that every week with a really laggy eShop is really fun. So it'd be nice to see some improvements from a performance point of view, but kind of counter to that would be discoverability and like being able to filter results and like categories and, oh, you like this game, well, you might want to buy this game, sort of thing. Those sort of improvements would be nice to see. And the fact they haven't done any of that
would be nice too. I swear we had reviews on there for like 2 seconds, and then they got.
You know what I want more than anything is a shopping cart. And that was when I saw a lot of people call out. Like last night, right? I said I bought 4 games that were on sale. It took me like 30 minutes to do it.
I constantly accidentally click the I'm done shopping and it quits the eShop and you have to go back into it
I did that
again
twice.
as well.
Like,
It's so frustrating.
And again, like, so I had to go through all of the games that were on sale and the recent releases, and I go and add them to my wish list, and then go to my wish list and do it individually, and maybe you get kicked out because you're an idiot like me and Steve, and it's just like, this is a thing that should have taken me 10 minutes max to look at it and buy it.
Through treacle. Yeah.
I had a serious issue this week as well with buying Littlewood, and I think it was because Monster Hunter came out on that same day and their servers were getting absolutely slammed.
Yeah,
but it charged me twice. I now have £10 in my Nintendo wallet because it charged me twice, and I have no idea why it did it, which was really frustrating.
So some other things to work out there in terms of performance and scaling and stuff as well. So yeah, I mean, just being able to actually navigate the eShop would be nice. And I think what's kind of frustrating is that they haven't really made many gains in terms of performance and like tweaking the eShop much. But the one thing they did do was add a Mario theme to the eShop. It's like, I can do without that. I don't need that.
Yeah.
I don't need to see
swear that
Mario
slowed it
around.
down
Just
as well. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the little Mario just like made it feel slower.
Yeah, because like they put the animations and stuff, and it's like, guys, the whole problem is that it doesn't load fast enough, and you're gonna just put like gooey stuff in to make it look nicer.
Sure, it's cute, but I can do without it for sure.
Yeah, I would much rather have the pages load. That would be chill. Yeah, I think it's clear that there's a lot to be done to improve the eShop experience, and it's funny because I think the fact that I had that experience last night and then read this morning, I was like, yeah, man, this really does suck. Like that there are this many complaints that people can just list up of just, we're 4 years in, guys. Maybe do something.
One thing I will say they do right, though, is the fact that you can buy the game on the website and it will download on the Switch. So I've done that before. Like, we've been recording a show before, and I'm like, oh, this game sounds great. And I've just gone online and bought it, and then when I'm done recording, it's there on my Switch, which is really nice.
I should probably ask how many people do that in the server, to be fair.
Oh yeah, that would be an interesting piece of data. Or like how many people are even aware that you can do that?
Yeah, I doubt most people even know you can do it.
Because I didn't know you could do that. I know you can do that with Xbox and PlayStation on their apps, but no idea I could get Nintendo stuff on the website. One that I thought was really interesting, or it was funny, I guess more so, was that somebody said like adding background music to the store was a super popular request.
I always think it's like a meme request, but I kind of enjoy it because, like, it wouldn't help performance at all, but one of those things. It'd be fun. Like
they should do. They should do a Nintendo Wii like anniversary one and put the Wii shopping channel music on once. That'd be so cool.
Well, it's funny because, like, I think I kind of had the same reaction, Chris, where it's like, oh yeah, that's funny, like that's a cute request or whatever. But I think about it and I'm like, man, yeah, like the UI of the Switch, like the experience of turning on your Switch or going on the eShop or whatever, it's the only Nintendo console where it has no identity.
Yeah.
See, I must be one of the only people that doesn't want music, and I think that's a thing of this generation. Xbox and PS5 don't have music either, and it's
I'm not bothered
nice.
at all. I mean, I think by design they chose quite a kind of slimline kind of UI, and kind of the system is quick by design. They want you to get in and play the games. And yeah, the Wii U was full of whimsy in terms of its menus and stuff, but it just kind of feels surplus to requirements. And it doesn't matter to add it, but yeah, I'm not fussed.
I miss the Wii music, man. You say that Wii Shop music, and everybody knows, like, that's an earworm, like, that's a great song.
It absolutely is a earworm.
I love that song. But one thing people want, and I'm aligned with in regards to the UI, is themes. Like, it's so strange that we've had the light and dark theme right at the beginning.
That's it.
And then nothing else since. And the same with like the media apps that people say they want. Where's Netflix? We've just got Funimation on there, but Netflix has games on the platform, but you can't watch the TV series that relate to the games, which is so bizarre.
And I think for older people, right? Like I've heard a lot of people like kind of offer this privileged position of like, well, you get Netflix on any other device. Like, do you really need it on your Switch or whatever? But like, I know a lot of younger people, like college age kids and stuff, that use YouTube or Hulu or whatever in the States, a lot on the Switch. So like,
Well, yeah,
just the fact that those options don't exist is so strange.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Like, I'll say, I don't need them on the Switch because it doesn't matter to me. But that's a really dumb attitude to take for everybody. So. Yeah, it would be nice to have them.
It's just weird because, like, the Netflix app was on the 3DS. Like, I could watch Netflix on the 3DS, but I can't watch it on the Switch.
It was on the Wii. You could get a disc and put it in your Wii, and it would work on the Wii, but it's not on the Nintendo Switch.
That is the funniest thing, that you needed a disc. I remember that. Oh, my gosh. It's just odd. I think that's the thing that's so strange to me about the Switch is, like, how much of it is, like, in a perfect world, this is what I would have wished Nintendo would do. And then the omissions are just like you can't get the shop to work. Like, we're still using 1998 netcode for online. Like, what are we doing, Switch guys?
Oh, man.
That was another area that I thought the data was really interesting, was like talking about the specifics of everything with Switch Online, and just like how many people are kind of split on the idea of like, is this worth it or not?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have the stat to hand, but yeah, a lot of people say, yeah, it provides value for money, but it's because it's cheap. It's not because it's good. It's like, I'm happy to pay it because I want to play online, but there's kind of like that was kind of my anecdotal kind of takeaway from it, is that people are like mildly fine with it, just kind of willingly pay it. Yeah, great, I get some access to some retro games, but they're like 30 years old. I'd rather have some modern ones, please. So,
yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
What's your view on Switch Online? What's your view on Switch Online personally? Because I know me and Pete both think the service is trash, basically, because you don't have party chat. Linking up with friends is next to impossible, especially in something like Splatoon 2, where we've been trying to play together so many times.
Online, just in general, is baffling to me.
It's just bad, and the fact that you have to use a mobile app in order to even get like voice chat or anything.
Yeah,
it's
the
not
whole
great.
Mobile app thing is just a joke, and
it's not even good. Like, it's not even good VoIP.
And I think it also speaks to that point you just raised about people not having access to other devices to watch like Netflix or YouTube. Well, what about those people who haven't got smartphones, like like an 8-year-old? How are they going to like play with their school friends? You know what I mean? So the smartphone app is a complete dud, and every year people are like, I don't use that thing. Like, it's like in the 90 percentile of people are like, nope, don't touch that. And why would you? I mean, it's even Nintendo don't seem bothered to kind of add support in for most of their games for it. So most people just use Discord. And I asked this year, what would you want Nintendo to do? Do you want them to like bake in a third-party service like Discord onto the Switch, or would you rather them just have all of their games use their weird app, or do you want them to just integrate voice chat into the system directly? Because like, it's possible, like Fortnite and Overwatch do it.
Right.
Why not all games? And yeah, obviously the majority say just integrate it directly into the system, like with my Nintendo ID or whatever it is. So that's what people want to see. But overall, their online service, I mean, it's fine. I'm grateful that I've got access to those retro games. I'd like to see others. I think the likelihood is we're going to get Game Boy games before we get, or GBA games even.
Yeah.
Before we get N64 games. I don't know what it is. There's just like, there seems to be some aversion to like going back to that stuff with Nintendo. Like, there's a reason we didn't get an N64 Mini. Probably because those games didn't age well. Like, for the most part, at least. I mean, Super Mario 64 holds up really well against my absolute goat. But
hell yes.
Like, go and play GoldenEye today, and it's not fun.
Well, and I don't think they'll be able to get GoldenEye on the service anyway.
Well,
they couldn't get it on anything else before. I don't think they'll get it now.
You think about too how many of those games are like focused on multiplayer, and it's like, are they gonna bundle 4 controllers in with it? Like,
exactly.
You can see immediately why they're like, forget it.
Yeah, we're not touching that with a barge pole. Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, I think that the service in general is just it's fine for the price, but there's a lot more they could do to make it a much more compelling. And it's even just getting the basics right is what they need to do, really,
Yeah. One thing I think is interesting was, I think you had called out in the like why you don't own a Switch yet, and one of the item lines was that people were mad that there isn't a virtual console. And then I think it's also funny how there seems to be an equal number of people who are like, but I don't like that I'm paying for these retro games. Like, people want retro games, but they want to be able to just get the ones they want, you know, and like this whole,
I also wonder if people want that far back, though. Do you really want 8-bit games? Because all of those NES games, I never bothered with.
Oh,
No.
Hey,
Hey,
you got a
buddy.
guest appearance.
A new guest appearance. Say hello, Zachary.
Hi, Zachary.
Yeah.
Hello.
You've been out walking. So yeah, I think the service generally is just a bit. But I'll be right back.
Okay.
No worries.
So overall, a lot of really great data here, and like super interesting read. And I know we've talked about it a lot here, but I highly recommend everybody go and dig into it for themselves, because it's just a super interesting piece of data journalism. Before we let you jump, Chris, I did want to talk to you a little bit more just about Switch Weekly and kind of the mechanics of it, I guess. You know, like you've got this newsletter that's been going for 4 years now. You've got a ton of people. I believe you said it's over 6,000 subscribers, right?
Yeah. So actually, I need to update that number because it's like 10,000 now. So.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah, you definitely want to
Wow.
update that one. That's almost double. That's awesome. So yeah, like what does that entail? Like running this newsletter with thousands of subscribers hanging on your word every week?
Well, it takes about 2 or 3 hours every Sunday to put together, but the kind of meat of it really is I bring you the stuff that you may have missed in the week. So for those of you who aren't sitting on Twitter all week, like me, basically the newsletter is bringing you the best of kind of like Nintendo writing from across the web and a list of all of the games that are coming out as well, along with like a little description of what I think of that game and if it's like one to watch or not. I kind of star the ones that I think look cool or look interesting. So that's kind of like what the newsletter is in terms of a nutshell. But in terms of pulling it all together, it's a lot of like drinking a lot of stuff and putting out what I think is good. You know, I just go scour the web for trying to find like good Nintendo reads and sharing them in the newsletter. Yeah.
So talk to me about the curation process. So like when you are, hunting things down, are there like voices or sources that you like generally flock to, or is it kind of like just seeing like the lay of the land and what are the things that caught your eye this week?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a lot of it which is just like stuff that bubbles up to the surface, and obviously a lot of people are sharing, and that's relevant to the audience, and that has to go in. But there's also stuff like I have like a load of lists of like sources that I follow, whether that's on Twitter or like RSS or email and things like that, and like certain voices. So I'll go through all of that every week, and if there's something that's particularly pithy or interesting, or just a bit different, I'll probably include that in. Just to try and make it a bit more diverse from other than just what you see like on like trending or like on Reddit and things like that. So try and make it a little bit different in that regard, but it's also kind of pulling together like what the consensus is on things. So if there's a big game, like for example, this week Monster Hunter Rise. So in this week's issue, I'll link to a few different reviews and kind of give an overview of what the consensus is on it. So that's that side of it. And it's just trawling through a lot of links and finding a lot of voices and trying to make it this like nice mix of things, for people to go through and read.
So you said that it takes you about 2 hours, 2 to 3 hours to put it together every Sunday. Is that where the bulk of the work is done on that Sunday? Or like, are you kind of doing the curation throughout the week and maybe making like a list of things that caught your attention, or?
So I've got like a few different tools that I use. Like, so throughout the week, I'll just be like finding stuff and being like, oh, I want to come back to that later. I want to come back to that later, come back to that later. But there'll be a time where I've got like a bookmarklet which saves like a link to a Google Sheet and then come back to it later and pick it up.
Okay.
And I might write it up there and then if I've got something in my head about what I want to say about a link, I'll write it out really, really quickly there on like a Tuesday morning or whatever. But for the most links, I'll just hit the thing and say I'll come back to it later. And then on a Sunday, I'll sit down, review what I've got in my queue, write them all up, compose the email, and that's that.
So is there like kind of like a threshold that you try to hit in terms of like how much you want to get in the newsletter every week, or is it kind of just like based on what you feel like is actually worth talking about?
Yeah, I think it's mainly just like a gut feeling. There's like a baseline. Obviously, I want like 10 links at the top, which are like really good stuff that you want to read. And the list of games is however many games there are. And that's where like the bulk of the time goes, because I have to like check each game on the Nintendo website. I link to it. I write something about it. but most weeks there's like 30 games coming out, so that takes a hell of a lot of time to put
Sure.
together. And that just goes to show how like the Switch library is blowing up. Like last week it was 35 games. And then right at the bottom of the newsletter, I have like quick links, which are just a bit more kind of pithy and like just a bit more kind of conversational in style, where I'd be like, oh, this thing looks cool, go take a look at that. Where, so that's kind of the makeup of it, I guess.
So with the new releases and everything, I'm interested in that because I know for how much comes out on the Switch, right? Like I sometimes feel disconnected from the overall breadth of the library because like I just mentioned, right? Like I bought Party Hard on Switch last night, a game I love. I didn't know it was on Switch. And I saw it was on Switch and it was on sale and I was like, "Oh, great. I would love to play that again. Let's snap that up." And there's like new content that I hadn't checked out. So that's exciting. Because you are checking this every single week and doing these write-ups, like do you feel like you really kind of have your finger on the pulse of what's coming out on Switch? And how often do you feel like when you're doing that research, like do games ever pique your interest for the first time there? Or do you have kind of an idea of what's coming out already?
No, I mean, a lot of the time, because I spend my time in the week at least just kind of finding links and adding them as go along, I'm kind of blind to what games are coming out until I get to the Sunday and go to the eShop, and I got my sources as well for where I get the data from for what's coming out. So yeah, I'm kind of blind to that every Sunday, and then I put the list together, and it's kind of illuminating in terms of, oh, well, that looks really interesting, and I've heard nothing about it. That's really cool. Like there was one last week. I can't remember what it's called now, like Cosmic Noir or something like that. I'll give you a link so you can pop it in the show notes. But
Perfect.
It looked really, really interesting, and it was one of those games that I'd not heard anything about. So it happens all the time, and just being able to kind of shine a little bit of a light on that and like say, oh, this looks really neat, go check it out, is kind of rewarding in itself, because a lot of these games just don't get any coverage whatsoever. Because like I say, another part of this is sharing links to reviews like the following week. So, there's 35 games that came out. I'll pick 5 and I'll link to reviews the next week to see what people thought of them. And I'll write down which ones I think are cool and come back to them the next week and then go and find a review for it. And like half the time, I can't find a review for the game. So these games just aren't getting the coverage. And I understand the kind of the problem there and kind of how that works and why that happens. But it's interesting nonetheless,
Yeah, definitely. I ask because there was when I was browsing the eShop last night, there was a game I saw that I was like, oh, this looks pretty interesting. Like this seems like it could be up my alley, and I was like kind of searching around for it, and I just couldn't find conversation about it. So then I'm like, it's like it's $20. Like I don't know this developer. Like I don't know if I want to take the shot on
and that
it.
makes you hesitant, right?
Yeah, it does. Right. So the fact that you're out there, kind of doing that legwork and checking these games out, that's really cool.
Okay, it was Genesis Noir, a cosmic point and click adventure spanning time and space. Just looked really cool. Like the visuals were really, really neat. But yeah, it's countless games like that come across my radar.
Oh, I saw this one, and I thought the same thing. I was like, this looks really cool, but yeah, I had heard nothing about it either.
Yeah. So it happens all the time. But you kind of to be expected with such a broad library.
Sure. So with the games in that regard, right? Like one of the questions you asked in the State of the Switch survey, right, is like, what is your monthly gaming budget? So with all these games that you're looking at, I imagine that's got to be pretty tough to not add to cart, not add to that non-existent cart that we have on the eShop. What is your gaming budget? How many games are you buying a week?
Not as many as the average in the survey. The average monthly spend on the survey was like what, $60, $70, something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Again, seems it's one big game a month, sure, but it seems a bit high. But again, it's an enthusiast crowd. But as for me, I probably spend between like £20 and £30 a month on games, just picking up 2 or 3 that look interesting. But with the sheer volume of stuff, I mean, I haven't got enough time. No one has enough time.
No. Is that something you find that you struggle with, like in terms of like finding the time to, because right, like when we were talking at the top, you said that you kind of were getting to what was the game that you said you got too late? Baba's You.
Baba's You. Yeah. I think absolutely that's the case, but I think that kind of comes with the job in terms of like being a curator. Being a curator is just like, it's more of like a tastemaker role. So like, just get a little taste of this, get a little taste of that. I'm not completing many games because I just try and get a quick hit of it, get the idea of what it's about, and then move on, So, but that just kind of comes with curating,
Totally. So anything that we didn't ask about, like when it comes to Switch Weekly, that you think is interesting or that you'd want people to know?
Switch Weekly wise, no, other than just like go take a look at it and like tell me what you think about it, because I love getting feedback from people, and there's a ton of people on the list and it's always really great. That's one of the things about it that's kind of hidden away from view, is because it's an email and I just encourage people to hit reply, no one sees it. No one sees the kind of conversations that I have with my readers every week, and it's such a rewarding relationship, but it's one in the shadows. And to be honest, I'm kind of fine with that, because privacy conscious and everything like that. That suits some people, and that's absolutely fine to have this kind of community in secret, but that's definitely a part of it. Yeah.
Awesome. So before we let you go, again, everyone should go and check out Switch Weekly. Go subscribe. Go check out the 2021 State of Switch. You being this tastemaker and this curator, I think it's always helpful, right, for a listener to get an idea of like what are the games that you hold really close to your heart, and what are your favorite games on the Switch. So for somebody who might want to take your recommendations, like, what's your favorite game on the Switch? Maybe like a favorite hidden gem, like maybe your favorite game of all time. Give us some of those.
Well, favorite game of all time is Super Mario 64, and that's on the Switch. That counts, right?
Boom! Double whammy.
In terms of like what I've played the most of, hello. Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. I mean, I know it's not a novel or interesting answer, but it's true. I put a lot of time into that game, and it really is something I hold dear to my heart.
Yeah, I mean, you're far from the only one with that attach rate, right? So, not a surprising answer. That's what I answered on the survey, so. All right, well, Chris, thank you so much for your time today. Before we let you go, just let everybody know where they can find you on the internet, where they can find Switch Weekly.
Sure. So Switch Weekly is at switchweekly.com. It's also on Twitter at Switch Weekly, and as for me, I'm at Chris Brandrick on Twitter as well, and that's probably the best way to find me.
Awesome.
But yeah, I'd love if you could check it out and subscribe.
Yeah, we'll have links to all that stuff down below, so definitely go check that out. Thank you so much for joining us today, Chris. We really appreciate it. It was awesome getting to pick your brain.
Thanks, man, and it's been great to talk to you.
Yeah, we'll have to do this again sometime.
Thanks so much.
So thanks so much again to Chris for tuning in and joining us. Again, you guys definitely want to go check out all of the cool information that is available on the Switch Weekly 2021 survey. Super interesting information there. So I hope you'll go check it out and give Chris a subscribe. So weird episode, right? Like, we're already an hour and a half in. We did the main topic. Normally I'd land the plane here, but there's a really big piece of Nintendo news that we would be absolutely remiss to not talk about. So we'll land the plane here on this one. And then we will kick all of our conversations about Microsoft's talks about buying Discord, the PlayStation stores getting shut down for PS3, PSP, and Vita, and Reggie leaving GameStop. All that will be on After Dark this week. So After Dark, it's a meaty one this week, so go check it out for $1. But before we get into that, let's talk about the news here, right? That broke from Bloomberg again, that Nintendo is set to use faster Nvidia chips in the new 2021 Switch model. So again, this one comes from, as I said, Bloomberg, and it is Takashi Mochizuki and Ian King. But Takashi obviously is the reporter who is often breaking a lot of like Switch hardware news, was the one who revealed the light and everything like that. Just a few weeks ago, when there was kind of that updated rumor about the Super Switch Pro, whatever you want to call it, Takashi was the one behind it. So obviously you can take the source to the bank on this one. So some of the information that dropped here, right, was that the new Switch iteration is going to be using NVIDIA's Deep Learning Super Sampling, or DLSS, to reproduce game visuals at 4K quality when plugged into a TV. So,
which is kind of what we assumed was going to be the case a couple of weeks ago when this story broke. It was like, well, how is Nintendo going to reach 4K? There's no way they can get that out of a handheld. And obviously we had Jeff Grubb's article saying, like, mulling over a few possible ways that they would do this, and it looks like it's going to be DLSS, which means most of these games will need to be updated because DLSS comes from the engine and it takes advantage of the CUDA cores in order to do the super sampling. But you can bet your bottom dollar that Nintendo is going to be updating all their first party games to take advantage of this, and I'm so excited at the prospect of Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, the Bowser's Fury, all of those games coming at you in 4K and presumably great frame rate on these faster chips.
God, I would love that. Especially like, I said at the top, right? I'm doing New Game Plus of Ghost, and that got its, 4K 60 FPS patch a while back. Playing the game again, I'm like, it's like almost alarming how real it looks sometimes.
Oh, is it a bit uncanny valley?
It's like not, because it actually looks good. Like, how like the uncanniness comes from like it almost looks real, but it doesn't. Like it's
this isn't a robot.
It's like overshot that a little bit for me. Where like there are times where I'm like walking through the environments and I'm just like, oh my God. Like I was walking in this area where there was a puddle. And the puddle was very small, but it was reflecting all of the trees and the light like perfectly. And I was like, this is insane. This looks like real. And that's the idea of
almost
that.
To the point where, do I need a live action movie, or could they just like record from the engine?
Just pull all the cutscenes, man. But then also alongside that, right, there was, a couple other bullet points worth calling out. It would be set to release later this year, 7-inch, 720p OLED screen, better CPU with more memory, and then analysts are saying it could be as much as a $400 price tag. So some of that,
yeah, well, that's a lot. So like over 120 on, or over 100 on what it is currently, right? It's $299 in America.
yes, yeah.
So $100 premium, I would pay it. This for me,
Yeah.
if this is all true, which I believe it is a day one purchase. I'm absolutely going to upgrade my Switch to this model. And I liked the fact that, so those bullet points came from Takashi's Twitter account. He posted them. And with a lot of games, I'm very excited about, because we haven't really heard anything that's coming out later this year.
Yeah.
It's all been like pushed into, the biggest game that's been announced is Splatoon 3, and that's for 2022, early 2022. So I'm very excited to see what might be coming later half of this year. Gives me great hope that Breath of the Wild 2 might be launching alongside this.
Oh my God. I really want it too. I really do.
Me too. 4K Breath of the Wild 2. They're going to have a very hot year if that's the case.
Yeah. That's another game like I keep thinking about playing over again, like and I'm just like, but there's 2 sequels coming out, like I don't want to overdo it, but like it would feel nice. It would feel really nice to play another Zelda this year. I don't know, man.
Well, you're going to play another Zelda. You've got that fantastic Skyward Sword that's held in such great standing by every Zelda fan.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I'll probably
that looks like Uncanny Valley to me. That the like, I looked at the faces on that thing. It's just like, oh my God, why is this the animation style?
I was just about to say maybe I'll just make you play it, but I'm already making you play Ocarina, so I feel like maybe that'll be, you can watch.
Yeah, that one's yours.
That's my cross to bear. I'll play Skyward Sword, and you can watch me play that.
Yeah, you enjoy that. Okay, but then the Twitch, because everyone keeps telling us to like spend the channel point. One of the channel point things is you have to play with motion controls for like 15 minutes or an hour.
You're a bastard. That's hilarious.
Forces you to play with motion controls.
You're a son of a bitch. That is brilliant and cruel. So yeah, I mean, I'm at the point where I'm taking this to the bank. I'm increasingly getting to the point where I'm going to be more surprised if this doesn't come than if it does.
Yeah, me too. I could see maybe the release later this year pushing. And the article said that some analysts are predicting that it'll be $399 and some are saying $349. So if it's $349, then great.
Yeah.
I mean, that brings it in line with what the Xbox Series S, I believe, it comes in at that price in America.
The S is $300 flat.
Okay. So $399 is probably a bit of an ask on top of the Xbox Series S, but analysts are saying they think Nintendo can get it with how high the sales of the Nintendo Switch is currently.
Especially if their plan is for it to be a premium product, right? Because if you'll recall, Takashi's previous report said that there was going to be like fewer than 1 million units in the wild because it was going to be just this premium product. So I think if that's how they're positioning it, and it's like, this is a premium product, you don't need to buy this upgrade, it doesn't matter, it's like, it's just going to be better,
Oh man, I really hope there's more than 1 million units because it's been a nightmare for everyone trying to get a PS5. Can you imagine? Like you
There's
add a Nintendo
1/5.
Switch Pro into the mix. It's
Yeah.
like, oh my god.
Sounds terrible. Ooh, excuse me. Yeah, I think that will be the thing that will limit it being a day one purchase for me more than anything would be just scarcity.
Not being able to get one, yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, I think that's also okay. Like, I want one at launch, but if I can't get one and it is just like, that's quality of life, then it's like, okay, like, that's fine. Like, I'll get one when I can get
I'd be
one.
happy with that. And you've already said that most of your gameplay is on handheld anyway.
Yeah, how much
It's
is it
still
going to
the
matter?
same 720p resolution screen, and yeah, it's OLED, but you're still getting the same res out of it. My hope is that the DLSS makes it so that more games can hit that 720p on handheld, but I don't know if they're going to reserve the DLSS just for docked. I'm very, very excited to see some kind of technical breakdown on this at like a GDC talk or something.
Yeah.
I think it could be very, very exciting, even just from Nvidia talking about their new Tegra processor that's going in this.
Yeah, or like the digital foundry breakdown where it's like,
Yeah.
here's how all of the performance compares. Here's screen by screen. You can count the frames. Like, yeah.
And that's when you're like, I need this day one.
That's what wins you over. I mean, that's the funny thing, man. With so much of this stuff, I feel like it really is like you touch it, and that's when it makes sense. It is like again, right? Like playing Ghost. Like, I loved Ghost, and I thought it was gorgeous at 30 FPS on my PS4 Pro, and I mean, it's night and day. Like, it looks.
I mean, I'd imagine that's the same with Spider-Man, right? You got the 60 frames a second. Yeah, then add the 60 frames a second with ray tracing into the mix.
Do you remember when we talked about that? When you were like, "Oh, like if you switch between the modes," and I went from performance mode to the graphics mode because I wanted to see the ray tracing, and I was like, "Oh, I can't play like this anymore because it like the going from 60 to 30. It's like, oh my god, like the movement speed just got cut in half. It feels like it feels like a totally different game. And as somebody who has like never been that person who's never cared about those things, like it's nuts to see that I'm starting to get used to them.
I hope 60 is the standard. I mean, that's been the standard for most like platformer or performance-driven Nintendo games anyway. You think about Smash, you think about ARMS, Splatoon, the Super Mario games, they're all 60, and they've all been like locked 60. It's only the games where frame rate isn't really a factor, like Animal Crossing,
Sure,
that they cut down to 30, which is why it was so surprising that in handheld Bowser's Fury cuts to 30, because it's the first 3D Mario that's done that in years, and it's the only Mario game on Switch. We can even add Mario Rabbids into the mix. That hits 60. So I hope that this allows them to reach 60 on handheld.
Yeah.
And I think it will. I mean, it sounds like it's going to be a very, very good device. And I'm excited for it. I really am ready for a new Switch. I'm ready for a new console. And I think, like I said, if I can get hold of one of these on day one, then it will be a day one purchase.
Yeah, I agree. And I wouldn't say I'm like itching for a new one, but like I'd be happy to upgrade.
I am, just because like it's 70 quid for a new set of Joy-Cons anyway.
Yeah.
And I need a new set of Joy-Cons. Like, get a new set of Joy-Cons with a new console. It
Might as
kind
well.
of justifies the cost a little bit.
Totally. Yeah, I'm right there with you. Not to mention you get a new dock and everything. Like,
Oh yeah.
it's a good investment. Cool. So I mean, keep it tuned for this one. I think you can take these rumors to the bank. Personally, I am excited to see the reveal and what it looks like, and to learn a little bit more about it from Nintendo, because I'm sure that there are things that Takashi and his cohorts have not been able to figure out yet that could also sweeten the deal, right? Like you think about stuff like the first time we saw HD Rumble and things like that, and it's like, oh, I wonder what other kind of features they might be able to work into this.
Well, and there was that rumor that there was going to be a new level of interaction or something, wasn't there?
Yeah.
And I mulled that maybe that would be
Camera.
a microphone.
Oh, right. Yeah.
I think you said camera, but I genuinely think it might be a microphone. Because there's been a microphone on the DS, the 3DS, the Wii U. This is the only kind of Nintendo product that hasn't had that, which is kind of curious. And I could see them wanting to bring like Hey Pikmin or Hey Pikachu or anything like that over to the Switch, which would be cool.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how this one shakes out, but I definitely think we'll probably hear more about it sooner than later. All right, so that's going to wrap it up for us this week. Remember, if you want to hear our thoughts on Microsoft and Discord, the closing down of the legacy PlayStation stores, or Reggie leaving GameStop, you can go head over to this week's After Dark. Thanks again to Chris for joining us. Remember, we have links to all of his stuff in the description down below. Please go check out Switch Weekly, show him your support, and let him know that Pete and Steve sent you. So, of course, get us all around the web. Head over to Twitch, head over to the YouTube, give us a like, give us a subscribe, click on the notification bell so you can see when the next episode goes live. All that fun stuff. You guys know how to internet at this point. We'll see you in the Discord, and we'll catch you next week for another episode of the PotsCast.